releases this past weekend. I went to a midnight one because my wife was busy and it was literally the only time I could make. I am not a night person, but I took a nap ahead of time and I made it. I went 3-1. Brian went 2-2. He went on an Saturday afternoon one. So we're going to go through each of our pools and then show you the two different builds. We'll start with Brian's because I have it open.
Okay.
So this is Brian's pool. I'm going to switch to...
We'll put this in the comments on YouTube.
Yep.
Thanks to this.
And, I'm sorry. Let's do view. Let's do text card. That's not what I wanted. View listing, and then sort by. So this is a little tricky. You got to sort by color first, and then view by spoiler. So we see the cards in order. Brian, I'm going to let you talk. Tell me how to scroll. So let's go in the colors in order. So
yeah.
Point out what you like.
So I was looking at white briefly. I saw not a whole lot. Keep scrolling. I saw a fair amount of flyers. What I did see in white that made me kind of excited was two sheer drops.
Sheer drop right here?
Yep. Because, in sealed you want to be running your removal. And sheer drop seems like pretty decent removal. I think it's actually better in this than Assassinate typically is. First of all, it has Awaken. Second of all, there's a lot of spawns running around, so you can chump with a spawn, assassinate something, or sheer drop something, as opposed to in other formats you'd have to take a big hit sometimes or trade something off and then assassinate. So I think sheer drop is pretty well positioned. It was fantastic. My deck almost always 2 for 1.5 if you count an Awaken as half a card. Yeah, so that's really the only thing that pulled me into white besides a few flyers. So I looked to as white as possibly a splash color. My blue was super strong. I had Anticipate, a bunch of flyers, Clutch Occurrence, Mist Intruder is okay. Actually, in my blue was pretty good. Merc Strider.
So you can see in the lower left here the quantity. So he had 1 Merc Mist Intruder, 2 Spell Shrivel. So as you look through, you can see how many of each one.
Tightening Coils is good. Wave Wing Elemental is a good finisher. So my blue was very strong. Oh, Wind Rider Patrol, fantastic. So blue was very, very strong. The problem was that I couldn't really get to enough playables in blue without running at least 2 of the counter spells, and I was a little bit suspicious of the counter spells because blue didn't have any early drops to hold the board. My black was fantastic. Bone Splinters I really like in this format because there's cards like Carrier Thrall, which I also really like in this format even if you didn't have Bone Splinters. Complete Disregard's good. Dominator Drone's good. Grave Birthing's good. Ghoul-Draw's Overseer's good. Mindbreaker I had in the sideboard, and I should have cited it in more often than I did. I had Knob Nixilis, that was my promo card, so black was pretty much sold. Sledge Crawler. I actually started with one of them main and one of them in the sideboard. After playing it 2 games in match 1, I cited my other one in for the rest of the games. It way overperformed.
So I played against one. I did not have any in my pool. I played against one, and it did it was better than I expected it to be. One guy, he chumped with a couple tokens and then sacked the tokens to pump this up and actually made his guy bigger than the guy he was blocking. So he was going to chump anyways and got value out of it, and you set yourself up to ingest on turn 1. So I definitely think it's stronger than I initially thought it would be. So I'd agree with your assessment. Yeah, now, how good is it? We'll find out, but it seems it's better than a 1-1 for 1.
I played it when I was playing against a friend, and I was like, "Don't look at this card that I'm playing." I just had to do it to make playables, and then I played it, and I'm like, "This card is actually Like I said, I cited it. I permanently put it into my deck after playing it 2 times. Vampiric Rites I actually cited that in twice as well, and it was really good against. I had an opponent who afterwards told me that somehow he managed to get 5 utter disregards.
Wow. Which.
Whatever. But, so I cited that in against him and made him pretty sad. So, Vampiric Rites, I would never start it, but keep that in mind if you end up running against a bunch of removal. It is a great card to have. And also, there was a lot more spawns, and Brian, you mentioned this to me as well. There are more spawns than I anticipated, and this card gets really good with those spawns.
Yep.
Barrage Tyrant. Okay, yep. So that was black. Black. I mean, you've seen my black. I'm definitely black. The question is, what else am I? Okay, so we have Barrage Tyrant. I like that card. If you have enough colorless, I mean, it's still a 5/3 for 5, even if you don't have very many other. It can finish people. It can be removal. So it was kind of a pull into red, but I was more thinking the splashing Barrage Tyrant, as we'll see the rest of my red, is super deep. Keep scrolling. Nettle Drone I like. Touch of the Void I really like as well. But see, all of these cards are splashable. So, but again, red just isn't very deep for me. So I was considering splashing red at this point as well. Okay, Brood. Okay, so Brood Monitor I really like. I'm not sure what to think about Brood Hunter Worm. It seems like a fine card, but it seems like 4s were kind of competitive.
It does. I think my opinion on this card is that it's usually it's going to be like it's hard to argue with it, right?
Yeah.
4 mana 4/3. There are like a number of like 3/2s and stuff, so like it doesn't always trade up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I it's not sexy, right?
Right.
You know, look at Brood Monitor and you go, oh, I got 3 1/1s, I can ramp, it does jumps, it does all these things. It doesn't do much.
Yep.
Yet I bet it's decent.
Yep.
I never saw one played and I did not.
It's not a card I wanted to play in a pre-release though, because it's not fun.
It's not fun. Right?
Earthen Arms I played and it was awesome.
I like the card. I do. I had it played against me. I had a opponent went 2 turns Skyrider Elf, turn 3 Earthen Arms, and I happened to draw into the clutch of the bounce spell.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I know. The 1 mana with a Awaken. And had I not drawn that, like it was a 5-turn clock on turn 3.
Yep. Yeah.
And 4 power gets around like complete.
Yep.
Is it complete disregard?
Yep. Complete disregard. Yeah.
It gets around a lot of stuff.
And I mean, it can also become like a 6/6 for 7 isn't bad.
Nope.
I mean, it does
or
take
pump
out
a creature and get a 4.
It does exactly. Like I really like the flexibility of that card a lot. That was
sorcery speed.
Yep, that was a stud for me. If it was instant, it'd be ridiculous.
It would be, but just keep that in mind. Because I was looking at Dispel a couple times in my sideboard, and there are a lot of sorcery speed effects that sometimes are instant speed effects. So Dispel was not as good of a sideboard card as I was hoping it to be. Anyways.
Jotty Offshoot, I actually sided that in once against a pretty aggressive deck, and I never drew it, but it would have made him very sad.
Okay.
I don't expect to do that a whole bunch, but when all you're trying to do is get to the late game. Lifespring Druid was great. I played that. Nissa's Renewal. I actually played this card. Oh, wait. I think I... Yeah. It was fantastic for me. Several games it stabilized me, filtered my deck, and you'll see later that it was very relevant. Seek the Wilds, I wasn't sure. That was actually what originally took the slot of my second... Sludge Guy. And I kicked that out in favor for Seek the Wilds. I actually played Swell of Growth, and it was pretty good. I only got to get the land once off of it, but I think tricks at the start of formats are a lot better. Yeah. Territorial Bailoff was another card that I sometimes sided into when I thought it would be a little bit slower. Blight Herder, I played...
Did you play the Elf, Skyrider Elf?
I didn't.
Okay. I didn't know if you did or not.
Yeah. That guy was a... Oh, never mind. That guy was not a draw into... Because I wasn't going to be green-blue. I was... Yeah. Blight Herder is... Yeah, that guy was good.
Very good. Even Blight Herder by itself is good. It's like almost always a play for 5 for a 4/5. If you get the second ability, it's like off the charts.
I saw this Evolving Wilds, and I was... Then that push said, I'm going to try and splash either white or red.
Okay.
Kozilek Channeler, great guy. A lot of the times I played him on 5 and he held the ground.
Sweet. That's what I was thinking he would do, so I'm glad he kind of panned out that way for you.
4 toughness isn't a joke. It stops a lot of stuff. Pilgrim's Eye was very, very good, and then you see why I was trying to play all those big guys was because I got Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger.
Did you play any Scour from Existence?
I had one in the sideboard. I never ended up siding it in.
Okay.
If my deck got to 7 mana, I usually won.
Okay. All right, so that's Brian's pool.
Yeah.
You can ask questions if you have questions about why things didn't start. But let's go to Brian's build.
And I end up...
Sort by color, and then view spoiler.
And I end up black, green, splashing, white.
So you got the sheer drops.
Yep.
Bone Splinter, Carrier Throw. I have not seen Brian's build before, so this is my first time looking at it. How did Grave Birthing work out for
Fantastic.
You liked it a lot?
It was very easy to get a 2 for So what I ended up doing a lot of the times was it's an instant, so you can cast it after attacks and then double block with the Scion and a creature. Like, that's not... I mean, that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is you cycle it, because it targets the opponent. They don't even need to have a card in their graveyard.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Sweet. It's good to know.
Gul'Draz's Overseer was really good. I never really got super wide with it. I did get to... I'll tell you later. I got to go off with it once. Ob Nixilis Reignited was an absolute all-star. I actually started Rising Miasma, which I...
Well, it looks like you can get bigger than it a lot of the times.
Exactly.
Especially
and it was
like
really good.
Arms, your one guy on turn 3 or something like that.
And it was really good. Brood Monitor. So I wanted to go green, because green gave me 3 ways of triple ramping, which when you have Ulamog is super important, because taking him from 10 to 7, like 7's a card you can play with a straight face. Blade
Channeler, Double Eye, plus Ulamog. So yeah, I mean, sort of a Abzan ramp value or something like that. Would you call it, or not value per se?
It was. I think it was Abzan ramp control, because I actually ended up with a really nice removal suite. I ended up with Spell of Growth for a trick, and then I had Complete Disregard, Ob Nixilis, Rising Miasma was a sweeper some of the times, Bone Splinters and double Sheer Drop. And I liked this build a lot because it had stuff it could do early to clog up the board, and then it just went over the top. Do we want to talk about your build of my pool? Or?
We're going to do that right now.
Sure.
All right, so I looked at Brian's today.
Do you want me to send you the changes?
No, why don't you just talk about them at the end?
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Sure.
So, when I saw Brian's build, I noticed a lot of the same things he did. Again, none of this is intended to be right or wrong. It's just discussion. What I sided towards was a 2-color deck, because while green provided fixing, it didn't provide some of the oomph I was looking for in a pool. And I felt like blue-black was maybe a little less raw power, but was consistent. So that's where I went with Brian's pool. I'm going to go over some of the cards both that I played and that I like and I want to test more. So what I saw in Brian's pool was like Mist Intruder. I played in my deck, and we'll go over mine in a second. Like on turn 2, it's good. Like ingesting once is really good, because a lot of times you only need to get one processor. You're only going to get one anyways the whole game. And so setting up a couple processes on turn 2 with like a Mist Intruder or the black 2/2 bear that ingests is really good, or the one that Brian was talking about, the Sludge Crawler. As a 1-drop, getting in for 1 ingest sets up your Merc Strider, sets up other stuff. So I liked running this early, and then later on you can chump with it, throw it away to Bone Splinters. There's a lot of things you can do with it. Clutch of Currents is one of my favorite cards in the set. It was so good for me. I had a guy play, without going through my build, he played the Sire of Insanity, the 6-drop Eldrazi that costs 4 and 2, a blue and a black. And he played it on turn 5 because he ramped into it. On my turn 5, I Clutch of Currents it. On my turn 6, I Merc Stridered it. And on my turn 7, I Bone Splintered it. He casted 3 times. I like bounce, kill. I time walked him 3 times. It was just so good. Like when they're ramping into one threat. And then they play that threat, and you just send it back to their hand. It just sets them back so far. Especially if it doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect. So this is a card that is very high value, possibly among the best blue commons, maybe the best blue common. Just all around.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's
fits in any style of deck. For example, Mist Intruder is great in one deck, right? Merc Strider is probably good in one deck. You're not going to play a 4-mana 3/2 unless you can have a chance to process. So, anyways, keep going on. So other things I like keeping this open. So like, if you have a hand where you get Anticipate and Horribly Awry, you keep your counter open on turn 2, and then if they don't play anything, you play Anticipate. Similar to Spell Shrivel on 3. Tightening Coils was great. I agree with you. Playing like one of them in your deck, I probably wouldn't go more than 2. It seems like a lot to play 2. But like a lot of times they would play their Eldrazi as a 5/7 or whatever, or however big it was, and I made Eldrazi a 3/9, and he couldn't attack with it.
I think it depends entirely what your ground game looks like.
It does, but it was really really good for me.
And I think in both of our pools there was enough flying support to make Tightening Coils very, very good.
And then I like the Wave Wing Elemental and the Rider Patrol as flying finishers because I found flying in my pool was just overpowered. Like flying is always good. It seemed even better when I played. All right, so then I think a lot of the black overlapped.
The only differences are I'm
a little more control-y, so I didn't have like the sludge.
Yep. So your blue package is 1 bigger than my green package. And then the only difference between that is... Oh, no, sorry. Your blue is 3 bigger than the green. And the difference... The other changes are I ran 2 Sludge Crawlers and a Bone Splinter.
Okay. Well, I ran Bone Splinter.
Oh.
So you missed... So we got that one.
So it must have been 2 different.
2 different.
Yeah.
Bone Splinter was very good for me as well. Like, sacking an Eldrazi to kill their... Sacking a Scion to kill their giant Eldrazi for 1 mana. Value Town. Even sacking a Carrier Thrall, etc. Just I sacked.
I never
Mist
sacked
Intruder.
I never sacked a full card to Bone Splinter the entire time, and I didn't even have all that many Scion things.
Yeah, and I did because I was playing like a tempo value deck, and it was just like I'll throw away my Bone Splinters and a card because I'm going to hit you for 5 this turn, and you're dead next turn.
Yeah.
I like the idea also of like keeping a complete disregard and the 3 mana counter. So it's like, do they play a spell? I counter it. Do they play a creature? I just kill it. Like, very appealing to me.
It also exiles for ingest.
Exiles for ingest. So Obnixilis is a no-brainer. Blighthurter's a no-brainer. Kozil's Chanter. Ulamog gets the pre-release. You absolutely 100%. Anyone who leaves a comment that Ulamog is wrong for this deck, while maybe technically right at the pre-release, you are 100% wrong.
Yeah. Why'd you run the Pilgrim's Eyes in your build?
Bone Splinter targets and get me more mana to make sure I kept hitting land drops.
Okay.
They also are really good with Ghoul's Overseer.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's why I ran those because
I think
more land and you can get it in for a couple points of damage, Bone Splinter target, and then Ghoul draws Overseer.
So like I was telling Ryan, I actually when I first built my deck, I built this deck. There's only a few differences. I was running 1 less of the counter spells, and I was running 1 less. I ran 1 less Pilgrim's Eye, and instead I had in one of the sludge crawlers and some other card I can't remember. So it was pretty close in this build. The reason I didn't end up going with it, and it might be easier to see when you're actually sorting the cards, is if you sort this deck by converted mana cost, you do like nothing super impactful until 3.
So if you sort this right, you basically you're actually pretty top heavy. I think when I looked at my version of this, there were like maybe 8 cards that were 5 or higher, which is a strong percentage. We'll go over a little bit about how the game's played out maybe at the end.
Yep.
So I don't know if this is, like I said, correct. But I do like, I found that flying was really good.
Yep.
I found that, even setting up, like if they just ramp into a spell and then you just counter it,
I just wasn't sure how, with this build,
and I could be wrong, so like I said, don't take my word as gospel.
And I honestly, I think that both of these builds are totally defendable. Yep. I'm just saying, I agree that your diagnosis of why this one is better is that it has more consistency, and I think it actually has better win conditions than mine does.
Sure.
I think mine has more of a top end. It has more of a top end, but it also has more of a bottom end. So I don't know why I'm saying. I guess
you also see Brian actually won here. So.
I guess your deck is I guess I would call the card level flatter than my deck.
Sure.
Whereas mine was higher variable, but I think the curve.
You could do things like I don't think this deck possibly could do beyond like an absurd draw. Like it's not going to hit. Ulamog in this deck is like a turn 9 or 10 to play. Whereas
I played it on turn 7.
Yeah, you got it on turn 7. So
also Nissa's Pilgrimage and the Ghouldra's Overseer fetching 3 swamps is
to give
hilarious. I did that. I did that once, and I only had 2 other creatures, but it just didn't matter because one of them was a Pilgrim's Eye, and I hit you for 7 with a Pilgrim's Eye, and And I gained 7 life.
I'm going to go over my build, and apparently, according to what Brian was telling me, that our 2 builds of this pool are within 2 cards of each other, so there shouldn't be too much discussion on this one. All right, so this is what I opened.
You might be mad at one of my changes.
Here's my total value. You can see I did not exactly win, but all right. So looking at my white, not very spectacular. I have no idea if this card's any good. It looks bad. 4 mana for a 2/3 flyer that you gain 2 life.
Yeah.
Felidar
Why did they make it an ally? Like, that would be enough to take me from to probably okay.
It's a steed, some sort of steed that they ride. This card, 5/3, 3, like 3/3 vigilance flying. Is it good? It's not an ally. I don't know. I don't know. It's good. Reproach, I like.
Sarah Angel, you've fallen a long way.
I liked Blade Whirl, and I liked Castigator, and I liked this patrol card. I also didn't mind this one, and I didn't. So it had sort of like a 2 to 3 drop theme, but they didn't. 2/3, 3/1, 2/2, 2/2. None of these fly. Just this one does, but it's like I liked the low curve of white, but it didn't seem to do much. So I kind of quickly dismissed white. All right, let's get into some good stuff here.
Yeah.
Cloud Manta. This card was really good for me because everyone was holding their removal for big stuff, and he kept hitting for 3 over and over and over again. And then eventually, I was within a turn or 2 of attacking, and then they'd have to deal with it, and it was really good. I did not expect a 3/2 flyer to do anything in the format, and I'm like, well, I need something, and it ended up being really good. So we'll see if that holds true or if it was just a fluke. I talked about this card, love it, potentially just all around the best blue common. Bouncing is real. You got to be careful what you bound. You can't bounce token makers and things like that. I had a guy play the +2. He put 2 1/1 counters on his 1/4 red Devoid guy, and I just bounced that with Awaken. So then he played it as a 1/4. I mean, it's just so good. It's so good. Coral Helm Guide I started. I ran in my deck. You'll see my build in a second. Chumped when I traded when I could early, and late game it's not totally dead because you can pay 5 and get some damage in. So another card I like. It does die to some of the 1 damage stuff, but I didn't run into any of it. Dampening Pulse I boarded in once against a guy who this was the only I went 3-1. I lost. He went turn 2 Call of the Scion, turn making 2 1/1s, turn 4 put a 1/1 and 2 1/1s into play, turn 3 Call of the Scion, and then turn 6 the +2/+0 first strike, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of damage. So I brought it in. LSV rated this card at a 3/5 out of 5. I don't know. I need to play with it more. We're going to do our testing this week. It seems okay. I just don't know if it's worth a start. I don't know.
That's actually one of my changes, so I don't know if we want to discuss that now or wait until the end.
Let's wait.
Okay.
So keep that. We'll talk a little bit more about it. I'm not sure where I stand on that card yet. It's basically what it amounts to. Dispel, I was hoping would be a better sideboard card for me. Like I said, there's just a ton of sorceries in this deck, or this what am I talking about? This set. A lot of stuff I was like, oh, I can counter that, and I'd be like, no, wait, that's a sorcery. It didn't do as much as I was hoping out of the board. Sky Spawner is insane. Playing this on 3 is gross. If they can't deal with it, this was another guy I could play on 3 and just 2 while this board got mucked up.
I like how they
spawns.
What was that? In cons they had the opposite where you got a stand step outcast.
Yeah, you got.
It's like stand step outcast was good, right? Well, what if I made the 2/1 the one that flies,
and the 1/1 you can trade in for a mana?
Yeah.
Guardian of Tazim is amazing. I played 10 games, resolved it 1 time, and was immediately Stone Fury. This was the last game I played, so I didn't get to play it until the last game. I saw nothing he could do to deal with it. I tap out for 5. I traded in a Scion, played it, then played an island to lock down one of his dudes, and I go, all right, we're going to see how good this card is. And he untaps Stone Fury, dead. I'm like, oh. Anyways, I didn't need to know. I didn't need to play this. Yeah. This is an amazing card. Incubator Drone, very good. No, I was worried about this at 4. Very good. Blocks a lot of the trades off with a lot of 2 power guys early. Spawns can't attack through it. Great. Mist Intruder, talked about it a little bit before. Loved it. Worked really well for me on 2. Even later in the game, if they didn't have a flyer, I get in a free ingest and then set up my processors, which in this case were Merc Strider. Was one of them. I don't know if I have any more, so we'll see. Merc Strider was great. I think I played it 3 times and twice got to bounce something. Fantastic. I did not play Oracle of Dust, and it's a potential change I would consider. I'll talk about that when I go on. A 3/5 body would have been more relevant to me than one of the cards I played, so it's a potential change because I don't think my build is 100% correct. I did not play Retreat to Coral Helm. I don't think it does enough. It seems like it's okay, but tap or untap, there's some of the other ones I feel are better, and I just don't like this one.
I don't know if I'd play any of them, but
I like the red one. I really want to test the red one and see if it's good.
Sure.
Ruination Guide was great.
Yeah.
Makes all your Scions +1/+0. Makes all your Awakened lands, which, as you can read here, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target land you control, and it becomes a 0/0 elemental. You see, there's no color attached to that. It was amazing. A lot of times it just sat there as like a mini anthem all by itself and didn't do anything because the opponent just either had to spend removal on it or just slowly lose to value. Putting it on your flyers, amazing. Great card. Tightening Coils I played one of. Did not play Rush of Ice. There are a lot of tap effects. I'll talk about that maybe at the end. We can do a quick summary of a couple of the tap effects that like lock down your guys were really good against me, so we'll talk about that. Started Bone Splinters. It was great for me. Culling Drone was very good for me. A lot of times I'd play it on 2, attack, and my opponent would take the ingest, and I don't know if you're supposed to do that or not. Because it sets up some of my other stuff. Yeah. I think you just have to trade for it. And when I would play this after turn 2, it almost always traded for like a 2 power guy or some 2 toughness guy. Like it was fine. It was fine card for me on my first playthrough. Started Dominator Drone, did much of the same thing. Frequently got the lose 2 life, and then I don't know if I ever ingested with it, but it didn't matter because I was always trading with an equal creature.
I didn't actually know that card had ingest, even though I played it. So that tells you how many times I hit with Dominator Drone.
I started Geyserfield Stalker because I wanted another way to win. I think my theory was sound. In practice, it didn't work out. I would move this card out of my deck. I thought 5/4 Menace with Landfall would be good, and it frequently was just like trade with a 3 power guy and a Scion, which just never affected the board much. I was hoping to like clear the Scions and then like Geyserfield, and then they would have a really hard time. It just was never good.
I think he's also just so miserable on defense.
He is. It's just. Yeah, so I'm glad I played it because I found out I didn't like it. Sure. So sometimes you do that at a pre-release or while you're testing, and I never liked it. And I think Menace in general in this set is less good. Like Bogart Brute in Origins at 3/2 Menace, I thought was very good, and I just don't think it's as good in this format because of all the Scions. Grip of Desolation was amazing. I hit Awakened Lands twice with it while hitting. Like it was.
It's an instant. Why is it an instant?
Speed. Amazing card. I think probably you always run 1, maybe 2, depending on what your curve stands. Gul'Draw's Overseer, never played it. 10 matches.
Oh.
Never, ever played it. Did not play Night Watch because I had no ways to trigger it to gain flying. The 4/5 body, though, could potentially be a start over the Menace guy that I mentioned I didn't like. It could just be straight up better than that guy most of the time. Malakir Familiar, fine card. 2 damage flyer, got in there a lot, traded when I needed to trade with something. Myers Malice is a card that I initially was like, well, it's Mind Rot, +1 mana. Yeah, Awaken, big deal. But it was really good. I boarded it in 1 time, and I realized my sample size is 1. But it was against a guy who was red-green. He played lots of 2 and 3 drops, and then kind of on 4 and 5 played more 2 and 3 drops. So a lot of times on like turn 5, he'd go 2-drop, 3-drop, and be left with like 2 cards in hand. And so I boarded this in and just nailed him with the Awake. Like 6, get a 3/3 that you can't get through, and you lost your last 2 cards. Even if you hit lands, he was heavy landfall. So like that was great for me too because he couldn't trigger his landfalls.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
I think this is better than it looks, better than Mind Rot may have been, because a lot of people, even like in the green decks, play out your stuff, ramp, play you get your 2 8-drops in hand or your 7 and your 8-drop as your last 2 cards, setting up to play them next turn, and then they just make you discard them.
I mean, even if you only hit 1 card, that's a 3/3 for 6 that makes your opponent discard a card. It's not great, but it's not...
In this format,
it's not
though,
embarrassing.
People are doing those things. It's not bad. All right, keep going. I'm going to start with Voracious Null. I played it, started it. I landed 1 of my 2. I thought the sacrifice ability, I knew it was a sorcery, so I didn't screw that up, but I thought I'd maybe trade in a Scion here or there. Never really happened.
Really?
Never happened. It was always a 2/2 that traded for another 2-power creature. Never did more than that. With that said, like I would consider starting the Assassin over it because of the extra toughness and the same cost. I can see this being better in some decks, like the green version where you're sacrificing. They're making a lot of Scions. It just didn't do much for me. Painful Truth was very good. For me, it was always a draw 2, lose 2 life, but the life never really mattered, and the playing 18 lands so I could keep hitting land drops and keep drawing into gas was relevant. Silent Skimmer was also really good and got better when I gave him 1 power with the blue card that gives colorless creatures +1/+0. So like hitting for 3 with
this is like the least impactful card you could give it to because.
But it changing it from 2 damage to 3 was really important a couple times.
I mean, you were talking. Yeah, I think that card is. I'm betting that if we end up black, we're going to end up drafting a lot of those in the early.
Yep.
And then people are going to figure it out.
Alright, so you can probably tell I played blue-black, similar to Brian's build. I'm going to go through my other colors, because I think red specifically is worth talking about. Red has a really nice curve, but it has lots of low toughness guys. And it was missing kind of the... black was my main color, I think, if I remember right. I don't know what was main. I guess I could have paired it with black or blue. But I just didn't... I felt like it was just short. You can see here, 2-drop, which makes 3/1s. Somebody played this against me better than I thought it was. One thing of note, he tried to play it with the green creature, that when creatures die, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. This exiles the token, and he actually put a counter on it first, and I caught it shortly after that and said, wait a minute. Most of these guys, these 3/1 elementals, will say sacrifice this at end of turn. This one actually says exile at the end, so be aware that that does not work. The 4/2 I like, gives him first strike, makes him really hard to block. The Sentinel, if I had more Devoid strategy, I would like, but I just didn't feel like there was enough there. These Lava Step Runners are not good enough. This guy seems okay, but just, like, the best case scenario is you maybe get in for 2 or 3, and then they're just going to die.
I played against a bunch of them, and even with my deck that seemed weak to that, I didn't have a problem with it.
I just never felt like I was like, I'm not going to do this. Ondu Champion's okay, it's a 4/3, but again, like, the 3/2 black guy trades for it. Outnumber, LSV gave this, he's like, it's usually going to be a shock, but I don't know. There are times where, I can see you putting this on the stack and then they bounce something or kill something in response.
I think outnumber is very good.
It scares me.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's... we'll test next week.
Sure.
But like I said, it scares me. Processor Assault is another card that really scares me because a lot of the other ingest sort of usable cards, okay, well, at least I get a 3/2 if I don't get to use its ability. This does nothing. You have to have a card in exile, and if you just can't get one, you're just sitting on a mola. You're just a mulligan. Stone Fury's okay. Certainly fine for common removal. Turn to Guess is probably a sideboard card, except maybe in some specific decks, but if they're planning to finish you with an Eldrazi, perfect target for that. The Predator I actually like a lot. That's one of the 3-drop that can make it be a 4/4 with Landfall. Really hard to block early on in the game. I also like this guy a lot, the 3/4 Trampler.
Sure.
So red was in consideration, but I just didn't feel like it had enough compared to the other 2 colors. Green was in small consideration as well, but as I looked at it, it just didn't do much, right? So let's look at it. Blister Pod is a card I like a lot. 1/1, you get a 1/1 when it dies, fine. Call of Scions I like. Earthen Arms I like. Druid I like. These are all kind of rampy spells, so I'm ramping, but then what? So here's a fight card, but what am I fighting? I don't have any big. I don't have a Baloth to fight with. I've got this guy, which is fine. I actually kind of like this card, and I want to test him out. But that's the. I have no. I'm going to scroll down here for a second. You will see in my pool there are no colorless Eldrazi that don't have Devoid.
I like that guy, but he'll always be sad to me because he took Palaka Worm's spot.
He did.
And he ain't no Palaka Worm.
Yep. So it fights okay. It's okay, but I felt like...
Yeah.
I felt like my deck was better suited for blue-black in what it was doing. I like the fight card, but again, what am I fighting? I'm not doing much with green, so I banded green pretty quick too. Brutal Explosion was my promo. If I had an Evolving Wilds or something, I would splash it off the blue, but I didn't get that either. I started Hedron Archive. I started Gruesome Slaughter. Never got to cast Gruesome Slaughter.
That card looks awesome.
So I had between Goldra's Overseer, Sphinx, the Sphinx, and Gruesome Slaughter, my 3 rares that I played. In 10 games, I played one of them. One time.
I actually wonder how good Gruesome Slaughter is.
I do not like this equipment.
No.
Pathway Arrows I considered against a bunch of Scions, but the first turn you can do anything with it. You pay 1, equip 2, and then pay 2.
I think
it's tough.
I kind of like it in some decks. The thing is, I think that there's better mana sinks in this.
I agree. hoping to test and determine exactly when you want to board that card in, if ever. So this ended up being my build. I talked about all these cards. I'm not going to go into depth. We'll see the change with the Brian. See if there's anything else I want to call it. This is definitely a card I would change when I build it next time. It just did not do enough. I was worried about having ways to finish. Turns out having a bunch of 2 and 3 power flyers that they couldn't deal with were good enough. The Voracious Null is the other card I would change, probably for like the 2/3 or something. We can go through and pick something else out, but. So there's my build. I went through pretty much all those cards. Let's look at Brian's build, which he said there's 2 cards that are different. So let's take a look. View spoiler. Alright, let's see if I can pick them off memory. So you mentioned one already. Yeah. Dampening Pulse and Oracle. So and I actually talked about potentially both of those. So why don't you talk about why you like those better?
So I kept the curve the same. Because I think your curve, or pretty much the same, because I thought your curve was pretty good. I think Dampening Pulse is fantastic. A lot of the games I played against ended up really wide, even with
games did go wide for me as well.
It makes your opponent attacking into you really miserable because you can double block a heck of a lot easier. Just look at what it would do to your deck.
Yeah.
Like Eldrazi's Sky Spawner becomes a 1/1 flyer that makes a 0/1 Eldrazi.
Does nothing.
That's a 0/1. Like that becomes a 2/2 for 4 that bounces a creature.
This is a 2/2 for 4. This is a 1/1.
I think that,
and blue has really no good ways of dealing with it. Neither does black. So a lot of colors aren't going to have main deck answers to it.
Yeah, I think it's also funny because it turns your current Eldrazi spawns into old-fashioned Eldrazi spawns. Not that makes it better, but I actually just realized that right now.
Yes, it's cute.
I just think that there's... I mean, yes, if they play an Eldrazi, you're sad-faced because
it doesn't
do too much. Like, a 9/10 Ulamog is still going to kill you. But the thing is that you need other removal for that anyways. Like, you're probably screwed anyways. So I think
I'm sold on probably starting it in my next build.
Okay. I think that you do need to be a more controlling deck. Like
it's funny, right? Because I thought that too. I thought I was going to kind of value people out and hit them with removal. Like a lot of games, I went 2-drop, 3-drop.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like I can't even tell you how many times I went either Sky Spawner, Manta. The 0/4 black flyer, this guy, I would get like 2 or 3 flyers out, and they couldn't do anything. I was just ping, boom.
I don't necessarily think you're necessarily a control deck. I think you're closer to like a traditional blue-white Skies deck.
I agree. It was like a Skies deck with some tempo elements to it, with bounce and stuff.
And I feel like a blue-white Skies deck would kill for a Dampening Pulse because you just hold down their ground. And they can't trade their flyers because flyers go from 1, 2, or 3 toughness to 2, 1, or nothing.
One of my favorite quotes from I played a guy in the 3rd round, and I go, I beat him both times with flyers, and he, by the end of the game, had better board position than me, but couldn't deal with the flyers. And I go, yeah, sorry about the flyers. And he goes, yeah, I wanted to play flyers, but I ended up playing spiders. And I'm like, wow, that's an awesome quote. Like when you just don't get the pool to play flyers, and you play spiders to deal with the flyers, and I ingested one of his mantises, and it was like, sometimes that's the way it goes.
So I actually put that in over Painful Truth.
Which one?
Oracle? No, I put in the Dampening Field over Painful Truth.
Okay, and then you cut the Menace guy for Oracle of Dust? Okay.
Yeah. The reasoning on Painful Truth is I think Oracle of Dust is a good mana sink. You do need to have...
If I get cards exiled...
And I felt like you had enough things to do that relatively...
And to be quite honest, the 3/5 body would have been way better for most of the time than the 3/2 Menace guy. Like I said, it just didn't... I thought it was going to be better. It just didn't work.
5... Like, there's not a... Like, red has some things that can trade evenly with that. But honestly, a lot of the other colors just have a lot of problems, I think, with a 3/5.
Yep. This card was... I keep going back to it. So the other thing is, like, if your ingest guys start getting blocked or you can't get through, like, you just get gas when this double exiles on turn 6. Like, it's so good.
Yeah. I honestly think that ingest is a little bit worse than it seems, just because there's so many... Like, you were saying you only need so many of them, and there's so many other ways to do it. And then the other thing I saw was the Hedron Archive, so you already have 1 draw 2. I wasn't sure if you needed another.
Yeah, I cashed this in a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, I had a lot of games where I drew 2 off both of them.
Okay.
Hedron Archive, a very common play for me, was to play this on turn 5 and then play a 3-drop, playing,
Sure.
Do like Sky Spawner, so like keep a blue
Yep.
open, Sky Spawner, and then next turn cash it in for 2
Yeah.
cards. Like it really,
I like it.
It really worked well. It's not a big mana deck, and I saw LSV's review and he gave this a 2.5, saying not every deck wants this and you have to be careful. I agree. Like some of the
Yeah.
landfall decks and stuff, you just don't want this card, and you could potentially make that case that my deck doesn't. But I do. Like I think I had it so many times. Like I said on turn 5. Play a null and trade. Play a bat and trade. Like it worked out really well on turn 5, and then cash it in next turn for 2.
Yep, and so I think your deck wanted one or the other, and that's what I was between painful. I was having trouble deciding whether to cut Painful Truths or the Hedron. And honestly, maybe I would cut the Hedron and do Painful Truths. I'm not sure though.
Yeah,
I'd have to look at your curve a little bit more and like do some test draws. Honestly, on that.
I agree, and so that's the other thing is so we're going to be doing some testing this weekend because we're playing in the Grand Prix after that. So hopefully we'll have a little bit better grip.
Yeah.
Know exactly. Like for example, Gruesome Slaughter in my deck specifically. I played it. I never got to play it, but the idea was that even if I couldn't kill an Eldrazi with it, I could wipe out everything else and put them in a really bad spot or get my flyers through or whatever. And there's enough, 3. Like this all adds up. 3, 1. This guy makes 3 power worth. This is 3 power worth. Like it all adds up. And if you can kill a 6 toughness.
When
guy
you
with
also
your
had
2 or 3 guys.
have the one that pumps the power on all of them.
Correct.
Like,
So right. So which I never got to do, but again, play a swamp and then
Yeah.
You
I meant didn't you?
the Eldrazi. Yeah.
The Ruination Guide.
Yes. That guy was very good for me all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, 2 cards out of a 40 card card deck. Like how many? Yeah. Anyways, so that I mean your deck I think was a lot more straightforward.
It was a lot more straightforward. It had a game plan, get ahead of curve, and then tempo them out at the end. It worked pretty well. I won without my rares because I never frickin' got to play them. But yeah, that's those are the 2 pools that we built. If you have comments, if you saw different builds, please let us know what you like or what you didn't like. And yeah, I think that wraps us up for the night.
Yeah,
it's,
my game plan now is to go to bed.
So we will be seeing you. We should be back more regularly and be more active on our YouTube and all that stuff, Twitter, etc. in the next couple weeks. Hopefully going forward through the winter because things slow down for us during the winter. So
Yep.
With that said, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Brian.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
It was a marathon.
I gotta shut it down.